Hey everyone, it's a little cloudy today, but I'm at the beach, close to the city, going into the city later. I know I'm gonna butcher the acronym, but I'm going in to see a meeting being put on by the newly formed Nova Scotia Association for Medical Cannabis Dispensaries. And yeah, should be interesting. It's at the Halifax Central Library, which gave me shit for living my Unshod lifestyle and trying to use their bathroom not too long ago, so hopefully that security guard's not there. Hopefully it goes over better than that, but we'll find out.
And I have to say, I think the easiest route and the most comprehensive route would be to work with the provincial government to develop legislation that permitted the current brick and mortar stores to remain open as long as they applied for and received a medical cannabis dealer license from the federal government under the Cannabis Act, and as long as the products they retailed came through those proper channels. Once legislation is developed that allows edibles and extracts to be sold, this would allow dispensaries to completely onboard if they wanted that vertical integration with their current production sites, which they now will have the opportunity to license as micro producers and processors. But, that being said, when the Nova Scotia Medicinal Association of Cannabis Dispensaries met with the Provincial Minister of Public Safety, Bob Purcell, last week, that was the closest we could get to the Minister of Justice so far, he emphasized that the provincial legislature had already passed what the game plan was, and that we were a little bit too late. While we had presented our written arguments, while we had been asked to be stakeholders of the conversation earlier, our voices were simply left unheard until now. And while the conversation was open and encouraging, he didn't leave us with a lot of hope leaving the room that a legislative process would open up anytime soon to onboard those of us who are currently providing to medically authorized patients. Of course, that doesn't mean we stop lobbying. It is essential that both businesses and patients alike continue to reach out to their elected officials over the coming months to repeatedly enforce the message that they need reasonable access to cannabis that is simply not being met by this system. So not only will the federal government now have legislation through which they can target the dispensaries, but the provincial government and even the municipal government, the HRM, have now developed legislation barring private medical cannabis storefronts from operating. We won't just be standing against one head in court anymore, we'll be standing against three. And surely with their funding and the province's clear legislative intent, it will be very difficult to not see the flame on these candles extinguished.
I'd like to thank the Nova Scotia's, if I can get this right, Nova Scotia Association of Medical Cannabis Dispensaries for inviting Mum to be a part of this evening. We've been registered as a not-for-profit here in the province for 15 years. I've been a medical cannabis patient for darn near 20, and have a long, loving relationship to the plant that's given me my life back. 20 years ago, I would not have been able to come in this building and walk down the stairs and driven myself here and taken part in this evening. But thanks to cannabis, I'm able to do that. I do have a relationship with dispensaries, although I have a designated grower, finally, who's been providing me with wonderful medicine, but not extracts and concentrates. It's not always convenient for me, it's not always affordable for me to be able to make those things at home. So sometimes I like to be able to turn to a dispensary to be able to access those. And I've learned many things by visiting local dispensaries. I've learned of the people that go there and how much so many people depend on the existence of dispensaries. And I will stand beside any medical dispensary in this province and fight to the end to ensure that they remain open and existing for people who need them to meet their therapeutic cannabis requirements. It's absolutely essential. I can remember the excitement in September, I believe it was September 4th, 2002, when the Senate committee said legalize it. I thought then it's about time that something progressive happened. And certainly the Senate committee was full of, the report was full of hope and optimism, particularly for compassion clubs and dispensaries. The Senate committee listened, they got it, they understood the importance of dispensaries, and they condoned Health Canada for turning their backs on them. They looked at dispensaries for a resource of knowledge and an ability to conduct research. But Health Canada turned their back to it, because the only thing they knew was a knee-jerk reaction to a court decision in keeping cannabis as absolutely bloody restricted as they could. But the Senate committee said, legalize it, legitimize it, and let's move forward and give the patients of this country what they need. In fact, what I have in front of me is part of the Senate committee report, and I just wanted to read a little bit of it. On therapeutic practices, this is what they were recommending, that measures should be taken to support and encourage the development of alternative practices, such as the establishment of compassion clubs. They went on to say that the practices of these organizations are in line with the therapeutic indications arising from clinical studies and meet the strict rules on quality and safety. That was just 16 years ago. And now the governments, once again, or not really once again, because they've never really welcomed dispensaries, seem to be preparing to turn their backs on them and shut them down, limiting access again to patients. Yes, there is a need for some people to have access to licensed producers, but dispensaries are essential too. People can grow their own at home or have someone grow it for them, but there will always, always be a need for dispensaries where staff are educated by first-hand experience, and there's nothing like that when it comes to cannabis, where you can go in, like Chris said, and smell the product. You can sample a small amount of it, and there's that wonderful, wonderful sense of community. I've met so many people at dispensaries that I wonder and think what their fate will be if dispensaries are to be shuttered and closed down. It's quite scary. For some people, it's their only home, it's their only family, it's the only place in the whole world where everybody gets them. Everybody understands them and accepts them for who they are, where they're coming from, what they've been through, and what their life is about.
Hi, I am from Ontario and I work with a dispensary that is Indigenous owned on a reserve. I was just wondering what's going on in Nova Scotia as far as dispensaries run by Indigenous folks.
In terms of actual brick and mortar storefronts, I'm not aware of any currently in operation, specifically with respect to First Nations. However, there was some significant media attention last week with the few First Nations communities that have networked with an organization from British Columbia that's tightly networked with Ross Regliotti, the infamous Canadian snowboarder that got caught with cannabis in his bloodstream and had his medals temporarily taken away. However, it looks like they're going to be looking to maintain their sovereignty and start their own production and distribution on that reserve, and I think that's a really exciting opportunity. I've already had two sort of semi-famous Canadian cannabis lawyers, if you want to call them, reach out to find out who the counsel was for that thing that's happening in Nova Scotia. So it's really still in its preliminary stages, but I think it's important to keep our eyes on it because there is a lot of future to be had there.
And I imagine also that Stephen McNeil has something here tonight, whether we know it or not. And I think it's important that we get that person, we get Stephen McNeil, the message that we're not going to just lay down, we're not just going to use a political response alone, that we will humiliate. He's supposed to be... He's a big free enterprise, but neoliberal, right? But when it comes to cannabis, never mind the free market, we're going to take government control. He's full of shit, he's a hypocrite, right? So, and I think we have to point that out, and I think we really have to humiliate him publicly. I appreciate the legal side of this, but I think we really have to do this. Yeah?
Well, we might not need to humiliate him, we might need to see them wake them up, because it seems like as soon as they're woken up, they start to move away from politics and getting involved in production themselves.
Somebody just asked me on Facebook Live, will the impact of Monsanto Bayer takeover in marijuana production in the States, what will the impact be?
That's a really good and interesting question. As someone that owns a hydroponics store where we retail the lights and the nutrients and that sort of thing as well, we've really seen the interest in Monsanto in that side of the industry. It started a couple of years ago with the purchase of Scott's Miracle-Gro by Monsanto, and then via that Scott subsidy, they started buying up a number of individual products, specific light brands, specific nutrient brands, specific fan and carbon filter brands. And then just a few months ago, via Scott's Miracle-Gro, Monsanto bought the largest hydroponics distributor in North America, Sunlight Garden Supply, which has some really well-established production and distribution streams coming out of China. And so, as an individual, while I have been working to move away from, Monsanto-based agriculture practices that I grew up on a family farm being a part of, I really find myself full circle now, once again being a retailer for Monsanto within the capacity of being a hydroponics store retailer. So it is a struggle, and there's a lot of issues that we're facing, and I think it's really incumbent on us as producers and distributors of medical cannabis to stop that from moving more aggressively into our industry in whatever shape or fashion we can. I think it's a process that's going to happen slowly but surely anyways, but when we work together to maintain our genetic pool that we've already developed and really make those genetics proliferate far and wide, I think that's how we'll keep them at bay as long as possible.
Is there any other questions, statements from the audience?
Curious, Chris, how taxes will come into play if dispensaries stay open.
Yeah, that's a really touchy subject right now, quite frankly. There are dispensaries that do remit HST on the cannabis products, whether you see that HST added to the cannabis after you purchase it, or whether it's embedded in the price and remitted without your knowledge, varies on dispensary. But there's certainly many dispensaries that continue to operate in a fashion of civil disobedience with respect to what the government said regarding HST. They have made it clear, both in committee meetings at the House of Commons when they were developing the Cannabis Act, and in Senate meetings, that HST does currently apply to medical cannabis, that it's not a zero-rated product like other prescription drugs. They say it's an authorization, not a prescription, and as such, they're completely under jurisdiction to apply HST. Nothing will change under the Cannabis Act, except you'll also have a $1 or a 10% or $1 excise tax also apply to your products, even if you're a medical cannabis patient. So you're looking at like a 25% tax in order to access this medicine. I think dispensaries that do operate in civil disobedience in that respect will probably face some battles with the CRA, and we'll see those in the future. But I think that's a fight for another day, and I think bringing forward the colleges of physicians from various provinces and having them testify that medical authorization is the equivalent of a medical prescription will be a good way to provide that evidence that cannabis ought to be zero-rated, and perhaps provide a legal argument to get it there.
So those dispensaries that charge tax now, who's collecting it for who?
Well, it's a self-regulation thing. So with the CRA, you're expected to self-permit on a yearly basis or quarterly basis, depending on the size of the business. And if you're doing that, you're probably getting some little bit of special protection from the police or from the federal government, because if you're remitting the HST, that's a pretty big number at the end of the year, and I'm sure they appreciate it.
I had some experience recently where I went to a clinic not far from here, And when they charged me the tax, I asked them for an HST number, they couldn't provide it, they only showed me the door. There's security before you can go in.
Well, to be quite frank, if you're issuing a receipt, it is supposed to be on the receipt an HST number, but I imagine, if receipts aren't being issued from the dispensary, which most dispensaries don't because they view it as being evidence that the police can use to lay charges, then probably your average bud tender is not going to know the HST number off the top of their head. I don't know my HST number, but that being said, there's a number of clinics. I know in Toronto, the Canna Clinic was remitting HST. In fact, at one point they had something like $600,000 in cash seized, and they argued that it was en route to the CRA, and the CRA actually called the police to inform them that was their money. I know that money is still stranded before the courts and the thing is ongoing, but it does show that there's some substantial money moving from dispensaries to the CRA.
So we'll do one more question and then we'll do our draw and we'll let you guys leave for the night. So
Let us leave, we don't want to go.
I really just want to say, I see there's a few of you here, maybe as old as me, who may remember, back in the early 70s, the government wanted to put a national park down in Eastern Shore. And it's the power of the people that made that park not to happen. I was part of that, and I watched that growing up, that, we can fight the government. We do not have to take this city down. So I encourage everybody to please support dispensaries.
So I'm in the car now, pretty happy to be wearing my pharmacist shirt, even though it's most likely backwards for you. But as you can see, the event went great, and I wasn't hassled at all for being barefoot. Unlike last time I was here at the library, but I'm thinking it may have only been maybe that one security person. Maybe he just had a problem with me, maybe he was misinformed. And he was standing guard at the door, so maybe I'm allowed here barefoot during regular hours and not for just... I don't really know what it is, but this was a great meeting. Pretty well attended. Wish the person, whoever was here representing the Nova Scotia Liberals, would have spoken up and said something, or wish some of the other provincial parties would have been here. But it is what it is. So thanks for watching. Have an awesome day, time, night, whatever.